Today's episode is brought to you by Elitefts.com, founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elitefts support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elitefts for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elitefts has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elitefts weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. And here we are, episode 83.
Wow, the precision. That was good.
Was the number right?
That was, 83, the perfect timing.
Cool.
It's like we've done this before.
And we're live and we're on YouTube.
Yep.
And I'm going to take a picture of our YouTube followers.
There we go.
There. So what now you guys can return the favor and share this video Table Talk podcast with all your friends so they can come join us as well.
Absolutely. And guys,
I can share that picture if they want. You share and I'll share.
Yeah, we'll share it. Yeah, guys, thanks for joining us. Really, this is number 83, like David said. Quite the busy season here at Elitefts. Quite the busy season for internet companies everywhere, but especially here. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to kind of jump into a little bit, but before we do that, you are all FU'd out.
Yeah.
You're super FU'd today.
Today's episode is brought to you by, this is so funny, the Dave Tate signature line. Just the fact that I have a signature line.
Of course.
Is so wrong.
Well, you're a fashionista, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A mogul.
I don't even know where to begin with. I was just joking with Tracy about this earlier today. And okay, so there's this fashionista fashion line, but the first time I wore jeans was about 3 months ago. The first time in probably 15 years. Then Juji comes out to film a video, and my fly's down the entire video.
That was good.
From that point, I'm like, this jean thing's probably over.
It was just a phase.
Just a short phase, back to the sweatpants again.
But yeah, there's people don't realize there's no mirrors at Elitefts.
No.
There's not a single mirror anywhere.
No, I have to look at my phone. I just did a little bit ago because I was wondering if my eyes are bloodshot or not, if I need Visine. So I have to look at my phone real quick, kind of see.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
But there's no mirrors. There's reasons for that. I didn't want them in the weight room, but then just said, fuck it, we didn't put them anywhere else. So there's no mirrors anywhere. But this episode is brought to you by the FU line, which oddly enough stemmed from a rant that was through the podcast and Table Talk. So what we got on now is there's the hoodie, there's a mug, there's the hat, and there's a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. They're all on the site live right now.
Right now, Jacob, if you want to post those links in there.
Yeah, the special with it, because it is kind of Black Friday season, the special is if you buy 4 pieces, you save $25. So that could be 4 hoodies, 4 t-shirts, 2 hats, 1 hoodie, or a cup, hat, hoodie, t-shirt. Doesn't matter. 4 items, save $25. That's how we support the podcast, or that's how you guys support the podcast. So that's how I am I won't say justifying, it's a bad word. It's how we're finding the value of the podcast, because all proceeds from this stuff is what I use to, when people were, if they've been following long enough, listen to me bitch and complain about how much podcasts cost. Yep. So this is what I'm using to outweigh those costs. And we're getting there. We're getting there. Yep. We could get there even more if you guys want.
Buy a few more things.
Buy some of the FU stuff, which is in the other thing. But the basic premise behind the FU line, if you go to the site and you click on the description of any of the items, it will tell you the FU is a mark that I put on myself before I get zippied up for a lift, before I get super psyched up for the lift. Yep. I don't want to get into a big rant like we did before.
Sure.
There's a video that we posted that's specifically just a cut from that, which is basically the FU isn't so much what people think it is. Mm-hmm. It was funny last night because my son Blaine had one on, and I asked him a question about something. I said, you know what? You're ignoring me. And the t-shirt's got, he just And I'm like, man, right there.
That's perfect.
There's a reason right there for everybody to have one of these. Because if you don't want to answer a question, you can just, point right to it.
Especially with the coffee cup, right? Like you just turn that around one way versus the other way.
I'll get into that here in a minute because that's even funnier. But it's not so much that. It's when I would get psyched up, I would think about all the things that make me upset, or and get enraged. But then flip it around and realize that those things got me upset because I allowed them to get me upset. So when I mark it close to my heart or I put it on my leg, wherever I put it, it's a reminder that I am in control of the situation, not the weight on the bar or whatever situation that you're in. So that's what the FU basically means. You mentioned the mug and it threw me off my train of thought because when I go to open it, it's vacuum sealed, which is kind of like a Fleshlight, but I wouldn't know that.
We actually did get a question if there was going to be and this is already a super chat, but where's the Dave Tate signature Fleshlight?
Well, it depends upon your size.
Yeah.
And if you like it rough, sharp, but this is going in the wrong direction right now. But it will keep my monster a little more cool, I suppose. But anyhow, we appreciate it, guys. Seriously. All the support, we do appreciate.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing a lot of people that even with just a very simple Instagram post, people got really, really excited about this stuff for real.
And these are limited edition items. Mm-hmm. Well, this one I'm going to say is kind of a limited edition item. If the mugs do well and the hats do well, we will restock them. Hoods and the tees, probably not. It's going to be like the Grow line. It's going to be like the other stuff.
Yep.
The Grow hood, there's still some of those left, by the way. We just took them off of the site. So when you land on the limited edition items, all you're seeing is FU right now instead of the other one. But all the other ones before the Grow one, excuse me, have sold out. Mm-hmm. The Grow ones, we increased the quantity count on it, and there's not a lot left. So they're about ready to sell out too.
It is kind of a cool experiment to see what, the speed at which some of these things go, Yeah,
the flannel's blasted for sure. The orange shit blasted for sure.
That was bizarre.
And we upped the quantity after the orange stuff because we were kind of thinking, there's no way we could have. And it wasn't that many to begin with. So
right.
We're not quite there yet, but we're getting into quantities that would actually be enough to support the podcast and not have to sit there and freak out about it.
Right.
But we're also trying to keep the quality. I still want to keep it limited.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
We have other lines for those types of things as well. That all aside, that's all I got.
That's good.
We can talk about Black Friday later, but we can get to the meat of the podcast.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to touch on, actually this is a good kind of a segue into that. Training this weekend. I know we've gotten a lot of people asking about how things are going, how things with Adam and I are going for this meet here in a couple weeks. And I think this weekend was probably one of the first good weekends I've had in a while.
It comes together.
But it really does. It was, you called it a reload week, if you want to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. You guys went through a Circumax. So the end of that heavy band Circumax was the week before. You have to deload before meet, but I don't like going straight from Circumax band tension, which is a lot of band tension, to a straight weight.
Right.
Because in a way, the bands kind of ground you. So one way to think about it is 2 extra legs. That would be kind of cool to squat with. Then you take that off, and it takes a little getting used to. So I like to put the chains in between with that, which, yes, the chains still ground you, but it's not the same.
No.
And the chains also set up right are going to they're going to let go. They're going to deload totally at the bottom, which brings the bands keep tension at the bottom. So it's different there as well. So the only trick with that, if you're going through it, is you can kind of guesstimate when you lay it all out what the weight will be, what the chain will be. And with the Circumax, the percentages are very high. So 95, 100 is Circumax. The chain, you still want it high, but it's still has to come down a little bit because the week after is the heaviest week in the entire training cycle. So you can't just kill it. So you need a little dip, but not too much. But if things go really well, because there is a different, there's a different accommodation that happened with the bands where you want to flex really hard out of the bottom to try to beat the bands.
Right.
Which is what kind of one of the reasons why you're using the bands. So sometimes when you go to the chains, it's like, holy cow, everything's just flying. Then you want to load more stuff. So that's why we worked up the last few sets with that wouldn't have been in there. Also on the little, I use a little Post-it note for days like this. On a little Post-it note in the little corner, it said, or nothing, or something like that.
Right.
Which would have been just a complete total just rest, because those 2 Circumax weeks are brutal as hell. So sometimes people get so beat up, they need a week off, belt squat, something like that. So not a week off, just to be able to next week take a weight, which could be in the opener type range, maybe even a little bit more.
Sure. With
full gear, full everything. So that's kind of what that was. So it went really well for you actually, because it all started to come together. Timing, it corrected pretty quick there. Same with the deadlift. When you pulled that, the timing was there. It was fine. You know, Adam, we didn't see because he was out of town. I saw the video of it. It was fine. He didn't have timing issues there. He did on the deadlift. Michaela did well.
Yeah.
On her meet. So it was her first meet. So that went really well. So one of them's done. So
yeah, right.
Went down 2 more to go and go from there. So it went well. The what we thought we were going to have to do, we can back up a little bit.
Sure.
For people that are following along with this, as we talked about moving the bench, you know, because of the bicep shoulder type issues that were happening, and you were out of town that week, and you kept the bench separate as well. Is Adam decided right after the squats, just looking at him, it was like, man, you probably shouldn't. You shouldn't do this right now, because you're like grabbing everything. Like, no, it's probably better to wait. You know, so he waited that next day instead of moving it through. So we didn't have to do what we thought we were going to do. Actually, would have been a bad call,
right? Because
it was worse. So that's where that was. It's just, you know, gear's just a little bit of a different.
For sure. And it's something that I really haven't experienced much with in terms of that high level of fatigue. And like you saw me between sets on the bench, I was just digging into my bicep on the bar. I just to numb it out enough to do the next set, just to get through the work. Right.
But you've done strong. This is the big takeaway here though, is you've competed enough in strongman that's not concerning to you. I mean,
you know, I live with a shitty bicep.
It sucks, it hurts and all that, where if it was a newer lifter or somebody new into peaking for a meet, that can become a mind fuck with that. Because, oh no, what am I going to do? Is this going to go away before the meet? And it's really not that big of a deal.
No.
And, you know, as an outsider trying to advise, you got to gauge that situation as well. It's like, well, okay, he knows it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's cool.
Yeah.
But then it becomes well, is it a bigger deal than what they're letting you think it is? Right. Because now there's a whole other side there where with Adam, that's the other point. Is, no, that's cool. So I got to ask you, or I got to ask Michaela, like, is this really cool, or is he really? Is it worse than? Oh, it's worse.
It's way worse.
It's way worse, man. It's like,
way
oh,
worse.
Shit. Okay. So then you mitigate that way.
Yeah, and that's it's nice to be constantly reminded of that level of feedback that's necessary to make those good decisions, right? Like if you were, God forbid, you had to work with Adam in a remote setting, he would be broken. Like he just would drive himself into the ground. He wouldn't. Well,
there's still two different things, right? Because there's a lot of feedback required to peak. How do I want to define this? To peak, I want to say efficiently, but then that's too broad, because if somebody is really, really thinking that this is just a hobby, and say on a scale of 1 to 10, at the highest it's like a 6 or a 7, their efficient is going to be somebody then at a 10. That higher that desire would be, the more important communication becomes. But you have to have multiple layers of communication. You and Adam talk about things that you and Adam won't talk to me about. You have a different relationship than this relationship that I have. So he'll tell you things he's not going to tell me. He's going to tell his girlfriend things he's not going to tell me. And even if I ask you certain things, you'll tell me some things, but you're not going to tell me other things that he's told you just because that's what friends do.
Sure.
But if at that higher level, you need to tap in, because if you're just tapping in as this quasi coach, mentor, whatever it is, you're only going to get so much of it.
Right.
When you're at that same, this is what I was trying to avoid, because I don't want to say level, because when you're at that same level, like here, I'm washed up meathead, here's competitive meatheads, right? So when you're at that same level, there's a different layer of trust. Where, well, if I tell him, right, then he's going to pull things back. I don't want to pull things back. I want everything there is.
Right.
So that's important to have. And I think with what you're saying, to backtrack it a little bit, if I was working with him remotely, but it wasn't his desire this high, it could definitely be done, right? Because then you don't need all that other information.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because, like you said, I'll have conversations with Adam. We're just shooting the shit, and I can't turn my coaching brain off at all, even when I'm talking to him, and I'm like listening to how he says things, and I'm listening to how we interact, and I'm like, he just said to Dave that he was fine, and I'm looking at him, I'm like, he's fucking not fine.
Yeah.
He's not even fucking close to fine. And then I'll poke, and then I'll prod as his training partner. I'm like, how fine does that elbow feel? Huh? Like,
exactly.
and I'll just keep poking and poking and poking. And he's like, fuck, fine, okay. It feels like shit. It feels like shit. Right? But you're right. It is that different layers. It's different directions and different kind of ways of working with an athlete, working with a training partner, and it's that relationship that's important.
Yes.
But
so that all went well. Like I said, hers went well. So that was a good thing, because that
was really good.
I'm more nervous about that one than it was anything else, because it was first meet.
Yeah, right.
Type thing. This vacuum seal is so strong that if it was a fleshlight, you get stuck and there'd be no pleasure. But then would it be medication?
Yeah. Right.
Inside joke,
but it's.
Wait, I just thought about this. Would it be medication or penetration? Ooh. That goes along with what we were talking about.
Yeah, you're right. So with the this is actually something I was going to talk to you tomorrow about. With how things are feeling, how things are going. There's a part of me, and this is just a fucking competitive. Like, I went into this experience being like, this is a learning experience, blah, blah, blah. This is great. But now it's down to the wire, and now I'm getting real fucking competitive. Now I'm getting real fucking serious about doing well. And based on our conversation and where my numbers are floating, if I cut a weight class, it may be floating in that elite territory. And then, I talked to Adam, I sent him a message, and but that's why I wanted to talk to you as the objective reality to the situation, because I knew what he was going to say. He goes, if it was me, fuck yeah, cut 2 weight classes.
No, you're talking about at least a 14-pound cut. Right. No.
Okay. That was easy. That was easy.
No, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily be that much against it, because this isn't a dig, but I mean, you're not shredded and you have enough water you could pull.
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely.
So that's not that big of a deal to be able to do that. But you're going to do this multiply experiment type thing, so you still don't really know. I can't say if you like it or don't like it until the whole thing is over.
Right.
So you don't know. And it may never do it again. So then why fuck up a chance for it to be the best experience it could be because of that? Sure. And then, so then you do that, then you go back into the strongman. It could be another year until it's that. So you do this, hit the off season, play around with the strongman training, and then your brain will start doing what your brain does, and you'll decide, well, maybe I want to do this. But if you're going to want to do it again, I'm going to probably guess it's not going to be like an experimental, let's see what goes with this. It's going to be like, I want to do this and kind of push this as much as I can.
Right.
Well, by not having that elite could be a good thing, because then it's like the first conversation I had with Adam when he came in here. It's like, okay, this isn't about the first meet. The first meet's just to qualify you for the second meet.
Right.
You know, then that increases the duration of what the whole process is going to be, which makes it better in the end, because there's still, I mean, we still haven't really tried to maximize gear in any way.
No, for sure.
It's just learn,
100%.
Learn what's there and be able to go with that. So that I would say no on. Now, if you said, this is where we want to go and this is what I want to do, then it would be, okay, you weigh about 212. It's a weird place. If this is what you want to do, where do you want to be?
Right.
Because we've got a decision to make here. Like, are we going to cut it down, which you could stay about there and pull that pretty easy?
Yeah, it wouldn't be too
Or
bad.
are we going to go up, right? So, because if you're going to have to go up, you don't want to just be 220 either. You don't want to be 240 like Adam. Adam will say be 260. You know, but, 225, and so then that comes part of that process. But tell you the same thing that I tell everybody else is, we still got a meet to do.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely.
So you still got to get that one done. There's a reason football coaches say, well, where do you think you're going to finish the year? You want to win the Super Bowl. It's like, well, we got 7 more games to go,
Yeah.
We got to win this next one first.
Yeah, but I just think that was something good to bring up for people who are listening at home, because I'm sure people have thought about, like, all right, well, if I hit the same numbers and at the different weight class, that sounds so common for any sort of weight class sport, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, if I just do the exact same thing I'm doing now, 20 pounds later.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another whole thing to throw in there.
Right.
And here's another factor that plays into that as well. Your gear's already too big.
Yeah.
So then you cut it and you don't get it back on the way it should come back on, and now you're going to have a bigger problem with that. So
yeah,
there's other things to work. I would just say, if the seconds go well, just lift more.
Yeah, right. That's good. I like that.
I mean, this sport's about getting bigger and stronger, So.
Right, for sure. And it's funny because, like, even during this time, I'm like, all right, what strongman shows are in the next year or so that I can see or kind of reach out for? Now I'm looking for shows where they allow suits and gear, because I'm like, fuck it. Now there was one I was looking at, I think in like Chicago or somewhere, and they have a strongman axle squat where suits are allowed, and it's only 500 fucking pounds, and I'm like, this is good.
When they do that, though, is it a dead stop?
You have to tap a platform.
Well, that would be awesome with a suit.
No shit. So I'm thinking, I'm going fucking wide.
Yeah, that'd be awesome with a suit.
So that's what I like. But I'm starting to see a lot of the benefits of having gone through this process on other aspects of strongman, of anything, right? Yeah. Because it's given me that chance to train in a way that I wouldn't have normally. I wouldn't have touched any of this shit.
Yes. And I'm going to guess that we've talked about this a little bit. Some of the takeaways that's going to come from it is your hips are going to probably be stronger. Now, how much that's going to play, we'll see. But, having stronger hips, I've never really seen hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
And it's also even just, granted gear, no gear, like to still have that amount of weight on your back more regularly, it makes it just not a big thing anymore. So for like yoke walks and shit, if I see a 600, 700 pound yoke, I'm like, yeah, okay.
I still don't understand the physiology behind this, but it makes you denser. Where maybe somebody out there who's smarter than me can explain this to me, but if I look at, old washed up, not even washed up, but just old powerlifters, people who've been powerlifting for a long time. You hug them, pat them on the back or whatever it is, it's like you're hitting a fucking wall.
Yeah.
I mean, they can be 350 pounds. I mean, they can have a belly that's just flapping in front. You hit them and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's like hitting a wall, where you can take a bodybuilder, even top level bodybuilders that have more lean body mass, and it's not that same type of wall. It's still a wall, but it's not the same thing. And I'm smart enough to know that there's not different types of muscle, but it's just a different dense thing. And strongman have that as well. Actually, maybe even more so.
It's just that upper back. Like it looks almost like a hump, right?
The upper
like
back and the torso and all the stuff. It's just, like I said, strongman have this as well. It's just like, what the, and maybe it is that supporting of those heavier weights, which is going to also develop that stronger torso as well.
Yeah, in the bone density, like it just makes everything heavier and harder and more dense.
I know, but you would think it's the same with bodybuilding, right? I mean, it's still bone density.
Yeah,
heavier weight. So
for sure, but there is something, and I can't even describe it. But even this weekend, I got under that weight, and like I was like, oh, this is like it. I wasn't ever worried about the weight on the bar at any given time, and I know that's from this style of training. Even in strongman, I'd be like, oh fuck, like a 10-pound jump, 20-pound jump. Like you start to reach those ends, and you get real fucking nervous. Here, now it turns into, okay, this is something where if the technique is there, this weight moves.
Technique and timing.
Yeah.
Timing's a big thing. So technique and timing are two things. The timing becomes more prevalent the further along you become, but it also, that kind of ties into that technique as well. So it's all coming along good.
Yeah. And it is funny because it starts to, and I hate to say this, but like minimize what heavy weight is in your head.
Well, that's, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, especially for someone like you that have seen crazy weights, but we're playing around with like 400 pounds on a bench, and it's like, it's not anywhere near like a maximal. It's just all technique driven at that point in time.
That's the double-edged sword though, right?
Because, well, right. Yeah. And then
I mean, say, man, all I ever wanted to do was to squat 600 pounds, man.
Yeah.
Just all I ever wanted. And then you squat it and you just kill it, right? You're like, fuck. I should have done 650, and it's like then it's like fucking 600. And then that, next training is like, oh, 600. Nah, man, I'm way stronger than that.
Yep.
But that's all you ever wanted to do.
Right.
It's never good enough. It's
a
crazy ass thing.
And I'm seeing that because now it is, like you had said, the technique and the timing, and it's like, fuck, I just gotta, like, I just wish there was better ways of practicing that technique and that timing. But you need the weight in your hands to practice it the same way.
Yeah.
Which it has just been like, fuck.
We're going to have to do one before this is over, at some point in time, to where you're just super high. Just because these YouTube people, they freaking love you, right? So you can put it out there. It's like, go, Sam, go. Now watch, and I'm going to predict this, right? Yeah. That's because the weights are still like 650, 7, whatever it is. You get up to like 8, a little bit more. It's gonna be that fucker squats high all the time, right? And then there's this. I want to see where the threshold is.
Yeah, for sure.
To where it's just gear. It's just this. At some point in time, all this fan base is gonna flip on you, right? So it
did that shit to Adam.
That's like, what I'm saying. So it's probably like a lot of the people that are commenting are probably just kind of like right in the same striking range to where they're thinking, if I put this stuff on, I could probably do that. And now when they get a little bit more, this fucker's high all the time. So I want to see how high we can go and still get, hell yeah, let's go.
It'll be interesting to see.
I don't want to do it and screw up your training. Right. It's like, hey, do one more. It's just for the YouTube. It's like,
after the meet.
It's even that. It's like I'm going to look at the camera. It's completely the wrong reason to train.
Just put it on Instagram. It's fine. But yeah, so the plan is going into, we're going to probably pull something heavy tomorrow. Or what's the plan, do you think, with that? I mean, obviously it can adjust, it can change based on how you're feeling, but
I don't know. I mean, we'll see how you feel, because biggest squat should be Saturday. Yeah. So the biggest pull could possibly be there, but I would rather it not. So I think we'll have to see. You're going to pull.
Oh,
There's no
for sure.
doubt you're going to pull.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be an audible on that because it was heavy pulls last week. So there's only so many weeks you can kind of get away with that. But there's a lot of timing issues. So those timing issues, and the timing issues there for those people that are listening was because the pulling against the bands, with a band tension at the start for a couple weeks. When I say a timing issue, I shouldn't really say issue. It got cleaned up. Yours was actually pretty cleaned up really fast. It was just more of a wedge, a different type of wedge. Where with Adam, it was definitely a timing issue that got worked out on like set 865. So that will kind of determine that if the timing issues are cleaned up after the first 220, probably 275, 315-ish.
Yep.
Then you probably work up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see it. And it's getting less and less, right? Because there were weeks there where it was like I would do well, and it was like real shitty, and then it was like I did okay. Like now the swing is getting more and more fine tuned, which is good to see.
I like to try to keep the last heaviest pull about 3 weeks out. Then the last heaviest squat 3 weeks, to 14 days. You get closer than 14 days. I don't want to do it. I'm putting this out there because people always ask, when should be the last heavy of this, and it's always different.
Sure.
The last heavy bench 7. If it's multiplying, the shirt's really, really bad, and the confidence is really, really bad, then maybe the Wednesday before, but that's a whole just touch go type of thing.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely in that home stretch, but not yet because the biggest, most important day is, this week.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's positioned right. It's positioned well. So this last week will tell if the accommodating resistance was worth, as we talked before, was worth the effort.
Yeah.
To be able to put in or not.
Now, as for those listening to this, as you get closer to a meet, and I'm sure this is pretty common sense for most people, the accessories, we start to kind of drop them out a little bit, right? The overall volume starts to go down. Is there anything that you want, for example, for like me and Adam, we were talking about on Sunday, like, just keep the triceps up, keep those moving, right? Keep doing those. Did a few sets of that. Are there any like tried and true things that you should kind of keep in closer to the meet in terms of accessories, or
anything that I call blood work?
Yep.
So blood work type of stuff. And then as these accessories and the supplementals do slowly start to pull out, you don't want to, you want to peak, you want to super compensate is what you're looking for. So you want to replace the activity level. So you still, you want blood to circulate. So if you don't do anything and the blood's not circulating, then it's going to take longer for you to actually recover. So that blood work crap, just the light bodybuilding stuff, band type stuff, walking and things like that need to kind of go in there, but it doesn't need to be as much as what people think. But there's a difference between doing the bench and just splitting, and then doing the bench and maybe later that day going walking around the neighborhood a couple times or stuff like it's a huge difference.
right?
So
I think even like as you are heading to compete, whether it's strongman, powerlifting, whatever it is, accessories can be a good way to get rid of some of that nervous energy, like just some movement in general. But again, like you don't want to overdo it and fuck yourself up a week out,
yes.
you know?
Yeah. Well, Adam's also got just taking a new job too.
Right.
So there's a big life pivot. So things that I'll be asking him about, he probably doesn't watch the podcast, so it doesn't.
Oh, he does. Oh, he fucking definitely
does. I'm not
does.
Say anything. But he's transparent. He knows where I'm going here. Is, where he was before, he was walking a lot. I think when he tracked the steps one time, it was like 30,000 in a day. I mean, it was a lot. So say that's his normal, and then that goes down to 3. Then that can't fall this far out. It can taper down, but those life changes like that have to be accommodated for. At the same time, the stress that he was at with his old position will be alleviated.
Right.
So that drops that. So those things have to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that, because he was, I mean, he'll be cutting weight for this meet. He'll be doing everything he does normally for the meet. And it'll be interesting to see, like, if he was walking 30, 40,000 steps in a day to now walking way less, his body weight's going to be like, oh shit.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Because he's still in the mindset of, I'm moving a lot and I need to hammer food to keep my weight at a certain range. But it's like, oh, now we may need to adjust that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll find out. We'll find that out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. So we'll be able to tell.
It'll be interesting to see that for sure. Your training went well this weekend too. I saw that you posted up.
My Fat Dad.
Yeah, you're right.
Fat Dad functional training.
It's bringing it back.
Yeah, I'm bringing
it back.
Yeah, it went well.
That was one of the best strings of posts that you have made talking about that training.
I know. I'm starting to think about it. I need sponsors again.
Oh, that was good.
And the only problem with that is I'm definitely more active on social media because of the things I'm doing for the company and all that. So to be able to, this is going to sound so bad, to be able to post a really good Fat Dad functional training conjugate post, I have to troll the industry and look at what other people are posting.
Yeah.
To be able to, I mean, the ones that are really trying to post, like, selling their online training with 3 spots left and all those, it takes a while to get a hang of what's going on with that. And right now I'm spending my time just trying to get a hang of what's going on with everybody with Black Friday and all the promotional, just overall temperature of what's going on in retail. That's another rabbit hole to get sucked down.
Oh yeah.
But it may not be as hard this time, because as I'm finding, as I start to post things back on my own personal Instagram, text-based things aren't what they used to be. So I don't have to, in other words, I don't have to do this in writing. I can just say it, which will make it a lot easier and faster and better, because most of the words I don't pronounce correctly, which makes it even funnier.
Now, I did, and there are some people that I've seen asking about how intense our smelling salts are.
Oh my God.
I want you to talk about what happened with you with the smelling salts. Was it last weekend?
Yeah, the Santa thing was bad. So we haven't put the Extreme Elf up yet. So it should be up before Black Friday. I mean, it's just a matter of just loading it, putting it up. So we have the Void, which is like a training smell. Then we have the Dark Side, which is it's high. High, how do you define it? Like high octane smelling salt, this whole thing is so stupid to me. But I'm still like, this weekend, I'm like, fuck it, give me the capsules, man. I'm done with that other shit.
Oh, yeah.
The Void. But the weekend before, when you weren't here, I did the Fat Dad functional reverse band, spider bar, high box, wide stance. I'm forgetting some, toes in, head back.
Right.
Squat, max effort squat. So if I really take the time and write it out, there's adjectives. There's like 87 adjectives of what this one verb is. Right. So that's how you tell how conjugate something is.
The specificity.
How many adjectives fall before the verb? Right. It needs to be at least 3 to truly be conjugate. If it's just 2, box squat,
nope, can't do it.
It's got to be like high box squat.
Well, and not even box squat. Box squat's one word in the world of conjugate. So,
so there you go.
Do 2 other things before that.
So with that, I felt I had an acclimation week, so I felt pretty good. I'm like, okay, fuck it, I'm going to push this a little bit.
Sure.
Let me see where it is, because that's one thing that I know what my all-time best is. It's a metric that I use. I know the number. And not that the number really matters because there's reverse bands, but I know the number. Let me see where I'm at. So I start to get a little fired up, write the FU on my hood. You know, I still had to write it because having it pre-written doesn't really have the same.
Doesn't have the same feel to it.
But I haven't tried to double it up yet. What if I wrote over? That might be like
the power.
That might be like double power. But and now if I had mirrors, I'd be all fucked up because then I'd see it and be psyched up the whole entire time.
You'd write it backwards.
I grab the Extreme Health and I open it up, stick it in my. First off, I'm already fired up. So I'm where I need to be. I write the FU and I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. Then I grab that just like for that little extra boost. It knocked me right out of my zone. It was like, oh.
Calmed him right down.
I felt like my nose was bleeding. And it's like, I told the guys, just wait a minute, man. Just stop.
Let me take a lap.
I need to get this shit out, man. It burnt my nose for about 5 minutes. Was able to get myself back in check. And then realized I probably don't want to stick my nose down in this bottle. And then I like held it like that. Everything went well after that. But that shit, it had a candy cane smell to it.
Yeah, it was like a candy cane and a brainstem.
Oh, man. It wasn't like that when I sampled this shit from the very beginning. This is like, it might be worse than the better or worse.
Yeah, it would depend on whatever metric you want to use for that.
Well, it's how I've never been a smelling salt type of person, so it's how acclimated.
Well, you were never a fashionista either.
Yeah, I know. So now it's like
you're a connoisseur of
give it a year.
Salt.
I mean, I have OCD, so you give it a year. There's peppermint, there's spearmint, there's pumpkin spice, there's turkey baster, there's whatever the hell
turkey baster,
fish, tuna. Yeah. Put it all out there, and but I do remember I used to use smelling salts. I used to make my own. So I would take...
Which is the fucking craziest thing that I've heard.
Yeah, I used to take a Gainer's Fuel bottle, so like a big protein container, and I'd stuff it full of old T-shirts, so then just drounce it in industrial ammonia. I would not suggest this to anybody, by the way. I'm not suggesting it to anybody now. And then put a little bit of rock salt and stuff in there so it wouldn't all leak out. And then shake it all up. You open that up, man, the whole gym smelled like a ammonia capsule. That got to that point because I would start with like little film dispensers, the little black dispensers.
Right.
When I was in high school, I used to spit my chewing tobacco in it. So when I was in class, because you could hide it, you put it in your hand. Teacher can't see it. You toss it in the trash.
I actually never thought of doing with the film container. That's brilliant.
Yeah, the little film container was the way to do it without having to spit on the floor of the classroom. When it was snowing or raining outside, and like people's shoes would bring in like the mud and dirt and shit like that.
I fucking know it.
You could just spit on the floor and just put it in there. But God, the memories this is bringing up right now is unfucking believable. But anyhow, you start with that, then you go to like a vitamin container, and then to like a mason jar, and then it's like a Gainer's Fuel bottle. And then, so that's where it ended up. When I came to Westside, Louis, you don't need all that shit. So there's no ammonia caps. We didn't use baby powder. All that stuff was just for the meat. So I'm like, well, fuck it. I guess I didn't need these anyhow.
Yeah.
And then slowly over the past 5 or 6 years, I got back into the ammonia caps for some reason. And still like those better, but they cut your fingers, right? That's not a big deal. I don't want to sit and bitch about it. But when I was taking a medication that thins your blood, the fucking thing would not. I would have to like wrap it with tissue and duct tape because it would bleed all over the gym. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I'm like, okay, that's when I said, I'm going to start these salt things again.
You're
and
right.
Then then Juji hit me that one time he was out here with, it's on video, I believe. I don't know if it's on our channel or his, but it's when he came out to do my reverse band spider bar, high box, wide stance, 28 adjective box squat. He stuck his shit under my nose, and oh my God, that was like super nitro. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, what if I actually use this? On top of the other stuff. Yeah. And his stuff's pretty fucking fierce too.
I mean, that was all over Joe Rogan there for a while. He was making other comedians and shit.
I watched that. That cracked me up, man.
So
Joe wasn't so funny, man. It was that other dude that was just
Theo
was
Vaughn.
Cracking me up. He's just like, yeah, I'll do it, man. I snort all kinds of shit.
Yeah, right.
And then he's kind of like,
Yeah.
I kind of like that. And then it's like he's thinking, because they don't know, right? They have no idea.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, I think he implied, I think we're supposed to put the crystals up our nose. If you listen real close,
yeah.
he's like, I think in his mind, he's thinking, I don't think we even did this right. We didn't even put the crystals.
Yeah, you didn't even take it
like
out of the bottle.
We need to weigh the crystals out and snort them. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, shit. Oh, yeah.
No, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was good. And then that started with Rob Kearney was talking about it. And then Joe ended up, I was actually looking at Juji's story the other day, and he was like up to his eyeballs in orders.
Oh, he's like sold out, I'm sure.
But him and like it was like him and Sam and the rest of the people that he works with through Grip Genie.
Yeah.
They were like in his garage for like days and days.
I bet.
They had bags and bags and bags of smelling salts. They were like, thank you. And you just see people that were sweating.
Oh, yeah. It's like a thank you, but fuck you.
Yeah, it's like, please stop. Please stop.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for some shit like that to happen.
Well, don't worry. I've already, I've messaged all of the big comedians that Joe Rogan had on his show and told them that I was like, we have the bar for you.
I don't know, man. The Juicy's is strong. I would put ours, I wouldn't put it above or under what Juicy's eyes. I'd say it's right there at the same level. But that peppermint shit's just deceiving.
You see like the elf on it. You're like, haha. Okay,
well, no, you open it and you smell it and you're thinking like candy canes, childhood memories, Santa Claus is coming. And it's like, this is happy times. And then it's like kicks you right in the dick, man.
Yeah, it's like
it'd be better if it smelled like dog shit. At least you would know it's coming.
This is a candy cane straight into your dick.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's just not right. It's like you need to make I'm not going to say what it is because I'm going to do it.
Okay, perfect. So what else we got going was we had the other Train Your Ass Off this weekend too.
Yes.
You would actually, so very cool, kind of a preview of what's to come over on John's channel.
Yeah.
The second day was more of I'll let you take it away, almost like a John-centric style of training, which is cool.
Well, something that John and I, because there's been a couple of videos that I've done with Noah, who hosts and runs John's YouTube. A couple videos with him already. There's a list that Noah had of ideas that they had that they wanted to do with me. But then I have a list of ideas that John wanted to do. And one of the things that he wanted to do was to kind of piggyback this Train Your Ass Off thing to where I would take care of the squat, bench, deadlift technique, and then the main supplemental exercises, kind of like what we do. And then at the very back end, where it is that brutal train your ass off type stuff, he would do that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the methods that I will use there, I've learned from him. A lot of them are not specifically his methods. They're methods that people have been using for bodybuilding training for years and years and years. But some of them I didn't know. That's probably the wrong word. Certain of them I didn't understand how they could really be applied.
Yeah, I didn't really utilize them.
Like an upset was a big thing that he does, which I always kind of knew you could do it, but I was like, well, why would you ever do that?
Right.
And then it kind of makes sense when it's like, well, it's kind of like all your warm-ups in a row,
right,
with that. So I tossed the idea out to Noah a couple weeks ago and said, look, I'm going to be running this again, with our own content team. We got a backlog right now of stuff that we're trying to get out. Well, would you be interested in coming out and doing this? So Saturday he wasn't available. So that's a squat deadlift type day, but Sunday he was, and he came out and filmed that one for John's channel. So it's the introduction, I think, went up today, which is me just kind of saying what I'm saying right now. And then I don't know how he's going to splice it all up, but there'll be the bench technique part. On John's channel, we'll probably do okay. Then the other training stuff will do a little bit better. But I did use some of the more John-ish type methods to not to tailor it so much to his site, but to kind of pay homage to him a little bit as well. Yeah. and I also wanted to show that, because it's very deceiving if you're watching our Train Your Ass Off videos, that why are they always doing partials? Why are they always doing this? Why is the weight always super heavy? And the context isn't ever really provided, nor do we want to take the context, because it already takes a hell of a lot of time to do the videos as they are, let alone put a voiceover on the stupid thing to be able to explain that.
Right.
So, with this one, you're seeing the hack squats. I use that one, but now we're controlling the tempo instead of, having it being higher. And a simple answer to why, sometimes it's higher than lower isn't because I'm anti full range of motion. I'm more, I'm more pro full range of motion than not. I'm pro not hurting somebody. So if I'm watching them and their back begins to move a little weird on the lower part of a hack squat, either we're not going to do it, or I'm just going to keep it out of that zone. Or if they're so fatigued, from what they did beforehand, then I want to keep it in that safest zone. So when they start to strain, they won't have that tendency. So it's different, and it's definitely different. It's still brutal. It's still brutal as all hell. I mean, these people, nobody. Still, like I've always said with these type of things, if somebody pukes, I failed. But I think, I seriously think somebody fell asleep.
Oh, he was out. Like it was on the floor.
Which I've never seen that.
That was an interesting
I've never
technique.
seen that one. So it's, I've seen people pass out, which again would be my failing. But I'm still trying to determine if somebody falling asleep is a pro or a con, and I'm just going to assume that it's a pro.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why it's, every time I see the video, it's different because, like you had said, the people that are coming here are different. Like there are different levels to each group. They have different backgrounds. They have different goals. They have different, all of this stuff. And each interaction with these groups is going to be different based on those people. So you on the fly have to kind of determine based on what we see with the training and based on the conversation that we have is like, okay, how do we best challenge this person based on, where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What I can say is after I did these before they were actually what they're called, but that didn't really necessarily have that big back end part of the training super hard.
Right.
It wasn't really that part of that, but I'm starting to see commonalities, is that the word I'm looking for?
Yep.
With everybody, regardless of, see, YouTube, I did not say irregardless of. I do learn slowly, but I learn.
That's a new t-shirt.
So irregardless of.
We have an It Depends shirt. We might as well.
Yes, exactly. We have the It Depends shirt. We got a few shirts. You buy one now.
There you go. Elitefts.com.
So oh shit, where was I going? All right, the commonalities that I'm seeing, takeaways that people listening to this or on YouTube can see, is when it comes to technique work, most of the people who are coming out here are working with online coaches. I'd say the bigger percent are working with online coaches, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of the pros and cons of working with online coaches. We've done that several times.
Yeah,
There's probably videos specifically on that. What the client / athlete, whatever you need to call them, need to do a better job of is asking better questions of their coaches with the technique stuff. Because I've now seen enough people that work with coaches that I know these guys know the answers of what they're to do. I'm just kind of guessing that they're not being framed the right questions, or they're not seeing enough repetitions to be able to know. So to the person who's working with an online coach, a couple things. You can just hire Sam. I guess, but anyhow, with that aspect of his business, I have no affiliation with that whatsoever.
Right.
That's a free pimp out. He can pay me for it later. But anyhow, the only reason I say that, because I know you're going to ask the question, you're going to dig deeper into asking that question, is when you send a video, there's going to be a lot of online coaches that are probably going to hate me for saying this, but when you send the video and then they receive the video, if you could put a question with that says, hey man, is there something I could do just immediately to be able to start working on what you see is wrong? Just, and I don't want to say ask for activation stuff, because everybody's going to call things a little bit differently, but there could be some things you could do immediately. You know, band pulls, just technique squats, squatting against a wall, you know,
Sure.
a lot of different things that you could be able to do. So I don't want to give examples of all these different things, so we'd be sitting here for hours, because who knows what it could be. But they could be. And I'll tell you what, most of the good coaches are going to know immediately. They're going to say, you know, yeah, your shoulders look a little tight. Why don't you start doing this? Boom, done.
Right.
And it takes no time on either person's part. You're not being a pain in the ass. They'll still address it whenever they're going to address the answer, however they do the answer. But at least that gets you working on that turnaround to fix it a little faster. That's the first thing there that I think can help them technically a lot. The other thing is when it comes to the later end accessory work and being able to get the greatest bang for the buck. I think when people see things like RPE, reps in reserve, and different scales, 7, 8, they're only thinking in their mind what a standard repetition is. They're not thinking, well, if I'm doing a set, say it's 3 sets of 10, and it's accessory, so there's no real warm-up sets required, right? I mean, it's a push down. You probably, but you need 2 reps to get the weight. So it's like a warm up, and say it's 3 sets of 10 that's programmed at 2 reps in the tank. Well, if you're at 4 reps and you're like, man, I can do way more, I think most people just stop at the 10 and just don't worry about it, or they just do way more, where there's other options. You can just slow it way down. You can flex harder, you know, peak contraction principle, you tempo changing principles, ISO holds, you know, whatever you can do to be able to get that to where that coach wants that perceived failure to be. And I think that's a big one, because I see it every time. Everybody I've ever worked with. And it comes with experience though, because the lifters that I've worked with, I say, oh, I just go do some shoulder work. And it's just a given that that's kind of how it's going to end up, you know, but with almost all, and there's like 2 I can think of that have not had this situation that have come out to these things. This has been the case every single time.
Yeah.
So to me, that those 2 things are big difference makers that people who are listening to this podcast can apply right now and don't need any higher education level. They don't need to go research anything. They don't need to go look anything up. They just can apply those 2 things, and their training will make a huge difference in their training.
And they'll be able to get more out of what they're doing.
Yes.
Right? Like that's one of the things that I think these iterations of the Train Your Ass Off are really, really cool to see, because you'll be working with these people. And this weekend we had 2 racks running up to a certain point, or 2 monoliths running. And then it was one person squats, then another person. So you could watch every single one. And you're like, you need to work, like you were literally pinpointing things they need to work on. And I'm like, all right, over here, we're going to try this thing. We're going to do this thing, get them back in rotation. So it was actually like pretty efficient, right? It's a long day, but in terms of the efficiency of learning, it's the quick turnaround on new concept is showcased, or new concept is taught, new concept is learned. Right? Like it again, but it's that instant feedback that I think when you don't know a person, or you don't know that exists, then it's kind of hard. And that draws the results out farther and farther, you know?
And over the last few, we've played around with the numbers a little bit, where, you know, there was, the one was a gym, you know, so I forget, it was 8 or 9 people or whatever it was. And actually with that one, I had a lot of those guys come back, because I don't think the experience was what it should have been, because it was 2 split at 8 people. And so when they came back, it, you know, dialed it on, it was fine, but it's kind of figuring out where that threshold is, and it definitely is 5.
Yeah.
1 over the 5, and
it's a whole different animal.
So that helps. Like each one of these things, as we kind of move this thing forward, it helps to be able to create a better experience. You know, the only thing, and very few people who are watching this or listening to this are going to give a shit, because they're not probably going to be any of those people in the group.
Right.
The only thing that needs to be kind of dialed down with what we're doing there is when it comes to the Q&A, I probably just need to record myself. Are there any other questions? And then just play that, because I have to ask it like 100 times. So, because the Q&A lasts a long time.
Yeah.
It lasts a long time. And I have no problem with that. I'll stay here until all night, which we have.
Yeah.
You know, I will stay here all night.
They're
paying for the time. They're going to get every bit of time that they paid for, plus some. So I will do that. But there probably nobody gives a fuck, but we'll work it out. But there'll be something done in advance to be able to help dial that in a little bit.
Right.
As we move forward with it. You know, the only other challenge that we kind of have is when we do run these things, because inevitably somebody's going to probably ask, you know, how do I sign up for this? Especially if it's going to go on John's thing, it's going to go there as well. There's the last call out, there were 142 people for 10 spots.
It's been going up.
So it's going up, and I don't know how to scale it, you know, and I don't know if I want to scale it.
Right.
You know, so there's a whole other side of that.
Yeah.
So,
because
they are fun to do.
Because it is such a unique experience, right? Even just to come out here and train is a unique experience, but to be able to get that full access to you and to everybody else that's out here it's very, very cool to see that. I mean, this is our 4th one since I've been here, right? This is the 4th one. And I feel like it's just getting better and better and better. 4 or 5. Yeah. And it's one of those things where each group is so different. It's like, I learn something from each group. I learn how to work with a new type of person, new type of lifter, new this, new that. And it's that hands-on experience for my end as well, to be able to see a lot of that. And it's like, how can I implement the knowledge I have, or directions in which to gain more knowledge to help these people better and better?
Well, I learned from all of them. I've learned from everybody that I've ever worked with, you know, and the cool thing is there's a little bit of a process on how, you know, people are matched, but they're not from the same backgrounds. They're not from the same place, you know, but they all jive when they get together, because that's kind of what the weight room does.
Yeah.
You know, which is an interesting, cool thing, you know.
For sure. And I think and that's part of that value that people get with the experience, is that now you have this cohort of people you went through this process with, and you all kind of went through the same sort of process. It may have been different based on who you are and what your strengths are, but it's cool to be like, we did this thing.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of laughing because we have a Discord group just for these people, right?
Yeah.
And so you send the invites out, you know, and the first thing other people are asking them is, man, how do you feel today? How do you feel?
I was
cracking up, man. I was cracking up from that. You know, so I try flying all the way to New Mexico. And
oh my
God,
the other one was I think it was Cody who said that he was kneeling coaching, and then he cramped up and had to lay on the floor.
Yeah, definitely a good time.
Yeah, they were great. And I know we have another one coming up in December, but I imagine there won't be anything until the next year.
No,
depending on whatever we have going on.
There, and I'm gonna see. I want to see if Noah can come out and film that one, which would be good, because that paired up group there is, I believe that's a fucking strong group. I think that's
fucking
a strong
mad.
group.
I won't be there.
I think that's a strong group. I try to do something with these things during the Arnold, but there's so many other pieces of the puzzle right now with that I have like all these different pieces with Arnold. Not me being at the Arnold in any way. There's just so-and-so wants to do a supplement thing here. So-and-so wants to do this here. Someone else wants to do this here.
Yeah, there's so many people coming into town.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I got to mesh it all together, you know, to make it fit, because I want them all. Everybody that's been asking so far, all those people, we're going to make it work.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you make it work and then stick in this? You know, which is a big ass thing.
It's 2 full days.
Yeah, I mean, during a Q&A, somebody else could, you know, they could be doing their whatever they need to do for their company, usually it's a team member that's doing something with that. So what I'm trying to say is there'll probably be a shout out for a couple, probably one at least during that time, maybe two. But the other tricky point is when you do a shout out for something like this and it's during the Arnold, and who knows if they're even going to have a fucking expo at the Arnold. So let's just assume like the world is a normal world and not a clown world. Just assume it's a normal world. Then they're here the whole time and they really don't have enough time to go to the Arnold. And if they do, they can't walk, because they're all fucked up. So there may be something different that we'll do that's shorter burst. That's not so much like we remove the Q&A or we remove the something to be able to fit things in there. So that would probably be the next call out. And
I mean, not only that, but if the Arnold is the same size as it usually is with all the events, a lot of the people that may have wanted to do the train your ass off may actually be competing at the Arnold.
They could, but it's normally what it is they may not financially want to travel. More, if they're going to travel for that, it's easier financially to be able to
they're already in the neighborhood,
make that one trip, than be able to put it in there. That's why I like to try to do things like that during that time, because it isn't just the cost of the event or the experience, it's the cost of getting to the experience, which is another big part of all that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, overall, I mean, it was again a strong group. And one thing I wanted to mention about the Q&As is the reason I think it takes such a long time is because regardless of how strong somebody is, everybody has questions in their head that they think are dumb questions.
I know, but
it's almost like pulling teeth at some points. It's like, please, there's no dumb questions here.
Yeah. This is why I like the Discord group, and just because I get where you're coming from, but by the time we get there, man, they have sweat all over each other. They've yelled for each other. They've snotted on each other. They've bled on each. I mean, they pretty much know each other, more than they know 99% of the people in the gyms that they're training with.
Right.
So that should be removed as far. I hope, but that's something, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I can ask now in that Discord group with all of them that are in there. Cause I even invited in the I don't know how many, 70 or something that were from all the other way past ones that kind of came in as well, to be able to see. That's better than a survey, because then they can kind of piggyback off each other on there as well.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and they're starting to share knowledge amongst each other based on the experiences they've had through theirs, but also like you have some pretty higher level coaches in there and athletes, and it's like everybody, that information is being disseminated within everybody in the group.
Yes. Well, when they're out here, we're also teaching them why. So it's not just do this, it's here's why it is the total live, learn, pass on thing. We're positioning themselves in a way so that they can ask better questions of their coaches, so they can help other people. So it's why it's 20 hours. And again, it sounds like we're trying to pimp this service, but there's a lot of things that I'm saying here that are really important for any coach or anybody that trains, or anybody that just simply has a training partner, or anybody that's trying to get better at training. This all kind of applies to that.
And especially, I mean, like you had said, like if you're a coach, like you can get something out of it. I remember the group, the group that I had, we were all coaches, and we were all just trying to hurry up and do our set so we could watch everybody else do what we were doing, so we could see and what you saw and have those conversations. And even in the Discord group, there's like a subgroup of like working with athletes, or like just like a conversation just started based on the interaction between myself and a few other people in there. And it's just really cool to see, because everybody's kind of checking in with everybody. Everybody's starting to kind of wonder how everybody's meets are going. And it's that community. And I think that was the point that I was really, really pumped to hear and see pretty much the most, because it's that I call it like after service support or whatever the hell they call that in the world. But it really is. It's just a community of people that you have a similar experience, and now you can share that information, share that knowledge with each other.
Or not, because they do that as well.
Yeah, because there is still benefit to being part of it and not actually talking in it, because you get to see, see and read all the crazy shit that's going on.
And I'll post things in there that are, if it's a video that I think will help them.
Yep.
I'll post. So the activity on there was very low leading into this. Now it will pick up again because another one kind of hit in there. And yeah. How it goes.
Absolutely. Cool. So let's go into our Q&As. We have a few super chats that came in. First one from Steve Higgins. Dave, I know you've touched on this before, but sometime can you do an in-depth discussion on the best training for older lifters? What's the best training method for longevity? I'm 53.
Those are two questions.
Yeah.
So there's the older lifters and then longevity.
Yeah.
Let's just make a note to be able to put something together that's a little bit more longer form and more structured.
Okay.
To go into that, because I'm just going to end up talking in circles about this. But for a short answer to be able to put out with that, if it's an older lifter, I'm going to assume when I hear that there's a couple decades of training. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is to ask yourself, what do you know works for you? What do you know you shouldn't be doing? Get that on the table. And then what you're going to find is you don't need to know as much as what you think you need to know. So instead of looking at this broad open sphere of 100%, you're only going to be looking at maybe a 20% thing. So especially being as I call a washed up meathead or an older lifter, you got nicks, you got dings, you have previous injuries, you have all these things. So if I think back, on my own training, it's looking at how much of this stuff is genetic, how much of it was going to happen anyhow, how much of it is just because of the years of abuse. Let's get that off the table and let's assume that's not a factor. Let's assume those plays no role whatsoever. Out of all the trials, tribulations, and adversities that I've had, how would I go about avoiding that if knowing what I know now? Any older lifter would have the same thought process. Yep. Right. So I can sit on my laurels and say, well, I had to hit my hip replaced because I got a strong family history of it. I was overdecked, I can do that. That's out there. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to deny that could be the majority of the reason. But let's just assume that nope, none of the reason whatsoever. Because if I assume that's all of the reason, then I've learned nothing from that injury. Yep. Right. So your injuries are the best learning experience that you have. Somebody that goes through, and there's very few, if any, probably none. Somebody that goes through 3 decades of training with no injuries isn't going to have a whole lot of base to be able to learn what's from. Right. So every missed weight, every injury, every bad meet cycle, every bad training day, all those bad things are your best learning experiences, because very rarely do we learn from our wins. We learn from our fails. Absolutely. So if there's no adversity, no injuries, I don't want to make it sound like people need to go out and hurt themselves. Right. And I'm trying to walk a fine line here. But at the same time, if there's somebody that's got no injury history whatsoever, then I question the truth in that, for one thing. Right. Because my first question back would be, how do you define injury? Right? Because is it a knife? Because maybe you got to figure that out, right? So that's aside from the whole point. Everybody has an injury history, and it's like, okay, this happened. Now, some of us, will see that and be like, oh, fuck, I'm going to do it anyhow. And so that's okay. Once you go through all those, you're going to find, let's say that open sphere that I was talking about is 30%. Once you go through and you address all those bad adversities, injuries, you just close that to 15%. Right. And then you actually know enough to answer the question you just asked. Right. The only thing that you're getting a little bit confused about would be trending psychobabble, which this industry has a nature of resurfacing the same shit in a different way year after year after year. And I used to rant about it, but I've seen things come around so many different times. I don't see it as a bad thing anymore, because in every one of these things, there's always good stuff that's part of it at its base and at its core.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a reminder.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
It's a reminder. So just high intensity type training. So people, when I say that now, I realize, you know, I've aged myself. Dorian Yates type training, you know, that type of training, that resurfaces very, very slowly and not as often as some of the other methods do. Mm-hmm. But when it does, you know, it's a good reminder of, oh shit, you know, that's a good way to control training economy. Mm-hmm. Once you get past all the people who are saying, oh, that's bullshit, you need more volume, you can't build hypertrophy without the volume.
Right.
And that's with anything. So I'm rambling.
No, that's good. That works. Yeah, Jacob, what we can do is that's a good topic that we can kind of jump into a little bit deeper at another time. That'll be good. Next.
You want to cover joint angles and, you know, making sure that the older lifter is covering all the movement planes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even granted, if it depends on who they are in terms of what they've done, what their athletic history has been, what their training history has been. But for most people, they think, okay, I'm going to train if they just follow bench, squat, deadlift, whatever, right? That's all in one movement plane, right? That's our body going, to keep it as simple as possible, front to back. That's plane, right. So what we want to start doing is just like I would do with, say, like a baseball player in the off season. I would work on putting them into positions in different movement patterns, whether it be rotating the other way, working laterally, working linearly in different ways, one-legged things, you know, just working on patterns of movement that they have not really done or have touched upon into any extended amount of time or volume, right? But one of the things that people get into trouble with, and I have as well in the past, is being so dogmatic and being like, okay, this training is right here, right now. And then like my off season, I'm doing everything the complete opposite. Right. And then you don't have any sort of like build up or a bridge between what you're doing now and where you want to go. It's the same example I give of when I first started doing this stuff with gear and all the multiply lifting. And it was like, all right, I know I need to squat wider, but right now, if I tried to get out there, I would blow something off of my body. But
I think with that older population that we're talking about, there is no competitive aspiration.
Right, for sure.
Right? So what happens is I threw that out there as a reminder to you, but I'm glad you commented to keep the discussion going with this, because it's good for them to be able to hear this and they can look forward to the video that you're going to put out.
Sure.
Is that you can't teach an old dog new tricks type thing. Mm-hmm. People get into their own little comfort zone of all the things that they like to do.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of the things that they probably should put in there, even if it's phasic in nature, but I'm kind of thinking with the group that we're talking about, it should kind of be in there all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, if this movement pattern is going to always be in there, then maybe so should the others.
Yeah.
And unless it is phasic, you know, and they're pushing for a reverse band spider squat, some stupid shit like that. But even after that, it has to come in from in the off season of the permanent off season.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things that, I mean, to keep it as simple as possible for someone that wants to get a takeaway message from this conversation, if you're training with very simple movements, bench, squat, dead, try doing something carrying a weight. Carry something in front, carry something in one hand, right? Go for a longer distance, go for a shorter distance with a little bit more weight, right? Adjusting those things, because that's incorporating all those different planes of movement into one thing that can have a lot of carryover to all the other stuff you want to do. And it helps keep you healthy because it's like, okay, well, if you carry your groceries in your right hand, switch to your left hand, right? It's just very simple, basic shit that you don't need to overhaul everything in your program. You just need to kind of start putting in things and taking things out that aren't serving you, right?
Yep.
So that's what I would say. The next super chat we got is actually just Joseph Wingham just dropping a super chat. There's no question involved with that, so thank you very much. Ian DiPuccio says, who do we share the podcast with if we don't have friends?
Well, you know, this is a good question. So when I train out here by myself, right? So on the Thursdays when I'll do like a washed up meathead every now and again, I have me, myself, my imaginary friend, and my pretend friend. So if I really wanted to share things with it, I would text myself, I'd email myself, maybe I'd send myself a DM, and I could get real weird and call myself.
You could write yourself a note.
I could call myself and talk to myself. Yeah.
Next one we got, we actually already kind of touched on this in the beginning of the show from CW. He just got the FU line. Where's the Tate SIgnature fleshlight?
That's just weird though, man. I mean, it was just weird. Like, I kind of like the idea, right? But
well, you still have your contact at Fleshlight. Let's see if we can make something happen.
I'm still wondering where my fucking fleshlights went. And that's a whole.
They were gone before I got here, so no one could pin that shit on me.
But it wasn't just the one that people saw here. There was a box.
Oh no!
And there was like 3 or 4 of them. Then there are these little pocket little things. It wasn't a fleshlight. It was like just this. It was what it looked like a pop. It looked like this, but made of silicone with a hole in it. You know, so there were a couple of those. Then there was some lube, and that was really it. But I started doing these, you know, Fat Dad. I'll start tagging them again as potential sponsors, because you got to have at least 10. So sponsors, you know, at.
Oh yeah.
10. So you got to have that plus the discount codes. You know, at least I remember all that.
Save 7%.
Yes. Yes.
Next one up from Joseph Wiggum. There should be a signature series lifting gear like straps and wraps. Just a suggestion from a super chat. Take that into consideration. Next one up. Same thing from Joseph Wiggum. He's just throwing money left and right. We appreciate it. He bought the Void smelling salts and broke a PR on bench and deadlifts using them. So that was good. Let's see. Alejandro Sanchez, want to use each level box SML, 3 weeks per box with red then blue bands. Increase each week for max effort. Good or a bad idea? Want to use, what the fuck? Jacob, can you?
No, it's small, medium, large. So
okay.
It's a different box, small, medium, large. So I'm guessing the height. So like low, medium, high.
So yeah.
What was the bands?
So with red, then blue. So I imagine he means mini bands and then heavy band?
I would, you know, so we're talking 3 weeks of each. So we're talking 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's too long for a max effort wave.
Okay.
You know, at the very most for a beginner, maybe 3 weeks with one type of variation. He is changing the variations, but it's still a box squat. It's still a squat.
Yeah.
So change out of the squat to maybe a hip hinge or some type of pull every few weeks and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Okay. Next one up, Jay Bell says, what will carry over to deadlift more for someone with strong legs and weak back? Manta ray squats or front squats with the front squat harness?
Neither. Because he just said strong legs. Then he just gave me 2 exercises that focus on the strong legs and not the weak back. Mm-hmm. I would say good mornings.
Yeah. I would have to say some sort of, even like an RDL or something.
Yes.
Like just, you need to think about the positions you're going to be in, the positions that you're weak in, and kind of focus on that from there. Another one from the same person, Jay Bell. What is the best lesson on life, training, coaching, or business that Sam has picked up working with Dave so far? Okay, I'll answer that one. I'd have to say that the biggest lessons I've learned so far from just being here in general is that the whole idea of live, learn, pass on is not just a saying. Right? In the people that come into Elite, the people that write for us, the people that support us, they truly embody that message of live, learn, pass on, right? The conversations I've been able to have with the majority of the fans on YouTube and Instagram are all very, very positive. And it's like this similar thread that I see through the business end of things. I see through the training end of things, and just start to finish. It's not just a saying, it's how things are done and how things should be done. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to take home so far through this process is like that should be a value that is held to a high standard in all aspects of whatever it is you're doing. And so that's what I've learned more so than anything else so far. Randy Malinowski, just want to support the show. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Randy, for that big super chat there. That was very nice. John Heineman says, I was wondering if Dave could talk about what he did for his groin injury, and did it ever really go away? Thanks for all you guys do.
This is going to be funny because I'm going to say, what one? Which answers the second part of that question. I'm going to give two answers to this. I had a groin injury when I was still competing. So now we're going way, way back. So I'm going to answer it as a competitor and having to deal with it. That was a bitch. That took a year and a half because it was, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physical therapist, I was a stupid meathead. Because that just took a lot of knee wrapping the groin and saying fuck it and just going through it. That was, and I don't know how this plays into it, but it's a variable. I was younger, so it wasn't, it bruised, but it wasn't anything like the other ones that I've had, recently that were just a fucking absolute nightmare. So I didn't have that. I could walk, it just hurt like hell, but it didn't have the inflammation that the other ones had. So if I could give myself advice back then from now that I can guarantee I would not have listened to, I would have said, just rest it for 6 weeks. Don't train the lower body at all unless it's something like a leg extension, something that's going to completely take the adductors out in almost every way possible, which is very hard to do. Even the leg extension, I'm like, it's very, very hard to do. But that I think would have made, because it fucked up 2-3 meets. Yeah. Because of that. And finally it got better, but I wouldn't have listened. So now, recently with what I've had, it was, it was the adductor.
Magnus?
It was Magnus, but there were two. So there were two that kind of fell in there. The swelling was fucking insane. Yeah. So the really insane. I couldn't walk. It was terrible. Just to sit for more than a couple hours, I couldn't do it because the pain would get so bad. Even when I sat, the leg had to be straight. It was a complete, absolute mess of a disaster. And then the swelling goes down into your calf, it goes into your shin, and then when it's in your shin all life, you just want to die. And managing that, so I don't know how many people are going to have that bad, a situation. Yeah. But managing that, the very first time I managed it, it was way more precautionary than the second time. The very first time, it's like, okay, we need to stop the swelling immediately somehow, however we can. And that's, fortunately, I know Ken Kanak, I know Eric Serrano. I got a team of people around that you take these supplements, do this, just to get that swelling to just fucking subside. And then once it subsides, then you gotta get it out. Yeah. And then that takes a little bit longer period of time. So my broad overview when it comes to things like this is A, swelling needs to subside. B, it needs to get back close to normal size, which is, you want the blood in there to help it heal, but you go to put the blood in there to help it heal. Sometimes the swelling just gets worse. So it's this balance that it's really hard to kind of navigate that. But I navigate it by just circumference measuring it and going on how it feels and all this other kind of pictures, all this other stuff to kind of navigate. But there is a certain turning point. Then when that turning point comes, range of motion has to be first. So any movement that's being done is to get the range of motion back in excess of what I'm going to be using it for. So I could say, you know, old Dave 30 years ago, I just need to squat parallel. Fuck it. This is no, I need to be able to squat to the fullest range of motion that the joint's going to allow for my body structure at that time before I start doing anything really strength oriented with it. Do I train the other leg? And that in this case, no, because I had to walk to be able to work the other leg. So that still became, you know, too much for that leg. Now, once that is able to do it relatively pain-free. So say half the range of motion is pain-free, the other half I got to kind of grin and bear it just a little bit. Then I start training it. And then I'm going to keep refocusing on that because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physical therapist. I try to get back into the exercise that hurt it as soon as I possibly can. That hurt it, that's what's going to build it. That's the way I see it, because that's what created the stress. Maybe it didn't create the trauma, but it actually was the final straw that broke the trauma. So then I'll go back on that, and then from there increase the range of motion on that, and it's just that process. The second time, it wasn't the same area, it was a different area. These were all both flukes too, by the way. So it wasn't with the heavier weights.
It's never doing cool shit.
No, man. The first one was actually, it was an exercise I can't stand to do. We have a power squat machine, and my leverages just don't work well on that machine unless I'm facing away doing a plie squat type thing, but it just doesn't fit me well. And that's how some machines are, you know, and that was the first one. The second one, when it happened, we were doing a train your ass off, and I was doing a strip setting the plates on these, you know, squat boxes, and all the fucking plates came down and hit my leg, and I'm like, ooh, fuck, that hurt. But then just kept going throughout the day, and then went through the next day, and then by that Monday, I'm like,
we're fucked. We're fucked.
And then it's bleeding all out again. So once I know or think there's an issue, I see, you know, Dr. Gilman, who's in Cincinnati. He does ultrasound to be able to tell me exactly what's going on. So is this torn? Does it need surgery? What's going on? That one, I was a little more aggressive and said, you know what? Fuck it. It's torn, but it's not as high. Like the first one was really up high, like right by my balls, man. And I saw Ted and what happened with that and how long that took, you know, for his. And I'm like, I don't want to take that long. So the first one might have taken 6-8 weeks. I mean, which is short comparatively to what other people are going to do. But you need to understand that I'm in a position that I can do therapy type stuff all the time. You know, I can work from my phone laying in a bed with a vibration log under my leg. You know? So I do realize I'm in a position that most people aren't in. If my leg starts to hurt because I'm sitting, I can just go work on a couch and prop my leg up. So it's not that big. The second one, I was like, okay, fuck, you know, I need to go see him, figure out what it is. And I started compression immediately to be able to try to mitigate some of that blood flow. That one wasn't as long, but it was the same process. It sucks. What takeaways in my wordiness is see somebody that knows what they're talking about, right? So I'm still going to default on that, and that's not always the easiest thing to do.
No.
Sometimes the doctor is just going to say, go rest it. They're going to give you anti-inflammatories. Maybe you need the inflammation to be able to help that. I'm not intelligent enough to give you the answer to what that is. You need somebody that can see it. I like the imaging. You know, I like to know with, you know, as soon as you can, because it starts swelling too much, it's harder to see. Especially with ultrasound. And I like the ultrasound because it's better imaging and it's immediate. They can say, here's what this is. Go from there. But find out what it is. try to get the inflammation to stop if it's gone over. Sometimes it takes for me, it takes a few days before it even starts to really bleed out.
Mm-hmm.
Also for me, it bleeds out like like nobody I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And hopefully I've corrected that issue with Dr. Serrano so it won't be that bad.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Moving forward in the future, because it's the same thing with the tricep when it was the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's more going on here than just tearing these or pulling these muscles.
Yeah.
So there's that, then whatever, if it's compression, whatever to subside that. And then you got to get the range of motion back. While you're getting the range of motion back, you need to get the fluid in there. Don't rush the process.
Mm-hmm.
I do rush the process, but you got to understand if I rush the process, you got to know my lifestyle, what I'm doing. Nutritionally, everything tightens up. And my nutrition by no means is my nutrition perfect.
Right.
But compare me to pretty much everybody else, it's 70% better than what they are.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already on point. So for me to really change the nutrition around when something like this happens, it's not that big of a change.
Right.
It's increase these supplements, maybe pull this out. Sometimes Eric will put more fats in, sometimes pull carbs, whatever it is based upon that, I just kind of default to him.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is going to now come to me as far as what I do personally for me and for me. I have to beat the demon when it starts coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start doing max effort work as soon as I possibly can.
Yep.
So I don't have to get under a weight later and think, oh shit, is this going to tear off?
Right.
And that was kind of the case with the tricep. So I started doing that with a reverse band. So it was like -5 pounds for max effort work.
Yeah.
But
still beat Joe.
Yeah, I get that. But see, now last Sunday, there's still just a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're talking, a lot higher weight.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That wasn't, my problem wasn't so much as my tricep going to tear off. It was, is this going to end up going back and hit me in the face? And that's because we only had 2 spotters.
It was getting a little squirrely
so
there.
it was getting, so that was more the problem. But I already dealt with that crap with 135, back then. So for me, that's a big one that I've seen with lifters as well.
Yeah.
Is how to figure out how to start putting the ability to strain back in and not have your brain be thinking about where that injury is.
Right. Yeah, you gotta have to build that up over time because, as you had mentioned, there's an injury response. Your body's just going to respond to an injury, a tear, a rip, a this, or that, with that inflammation, and it's trying to isolate the area so you can't move it as far.
That's what the body.
Right?
I mean,
it's almost a natural cast that kind of happens in the area, right?
I mean, the body's kind of built to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like immobilize this a little bit so we don't kind of make it worse.
Yes.
Yeah. So
actually, that's great that you said that because those are your markers right there.
Mm-hmm.
We are made to get hurt and heal.
Right.
You can try to rush that process. Good luck.
Yeah.
Maybe you pick up a day or two, but at the end of it, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
but when you try to overstep the process, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? So all these things happen for a reason. Sometimes they can go, way too much inflammation, maybe not enough inflammation. I don't say.
Right. Next one, would Elite FTS ever consider sponsoring collegiate powerlifting teams? He says McKendree. I imagine it's a school.
I'm never going to say never.
You're right.
Right. Give us some time, man. I mean, we're restructuring, a lot of our content to be able to bring you guys better content, more efficient content, faster content. I'd like to get the content back up to the pace it was, a couple years ago and more. So there's not a lot of content team right now. We'll be adding another one here shortly and then another one, shortly after that, but building is part of that process. So we need to, we're taking care of the articles and we got to take care of the article flow, which is actually pretty good. It's just how to step it up. We're taking care of the video flow. We're taking care of the social media flow. And then there is another path, which they're talking about, which is like the athlete sponsor, that type of path. That's so low on our list of priorities right now, but it is there. So I don't want to ever say, Never. I mean, obviously, if the right opportunity presents itself, of course,
You're right.
you know, we're going to look at that, but we haven't had it at that point.
All right, next one up from Fister Pistols. The super chat says Sam's monster is on me. So thank you, Fister Pistols, for the free monster there, bud. Johnson Benjamin says, "Is there still a nacho fund?"
I don't know. How much did he give?
$4.99.
That buys like inflation, dude. I can't buy a bag of nachos. I don't know. I don't. With how much? I can probably buy the little sandwich bag of Doritos.
You're right.
$4.99. I got 2 in my office right now, by the way. So.
Next one up from Ian again. He says, "Buying Sam a monster because he said my name right." Oh, there you go, Ian.
That reminds me, I need to get Jim back out once the season's over. Yeah. So we'll have it. I need to get Jim and I need to get those guys back.
Yep, that'll be good. From Jack Stone, having trouble keeping knuckles towards ceiling in bench. Wonder what no bullshit forearm exercise you would suggest.
What do you mean by knuckles? You know, so I mean, here, you know.
Yeah, you got a few of them.
It's a good cue if you can see the person, right? What you want is the bar to be positioned over your forearm, the best it can be. Am I saying that if the barbell falls a little bit behind the forearm, that's evil and bad and it's going to wreck your wrist and screw your forearms up? By no means, no. That's not the case. If that was the case, a lot of people would be breaking their forearms that aren't. So I don't know how to answer that because I can't see what he's talking about unless you have a better idea.
No, if I just assume that I just default to thinking that he has the wrist real cocked back, and it's a practice thing, man. Like it's, I wouldn't say that there's an exercise. Obviously, getting stronger forearms will help, right? So
try to squeeze the bar harder.
That could be it too.
If you squeeze the bar harder, it's really hard to squeeze the bar hard when your hand's like that.
All cocked back.
Now, if it's like that, it's easier, and it's even hard to squeeze your hard here.
Right.
So in the position you can squeeze the hardest is going to be a better position for you to bench in.
Good idea. Robert Heinrich here just gave $5. Thank you very much for that, Robert. From George, did Dave get to see Matt Dimmel squat 1,000 pounds for the first time, or was he not at Westside yet?
I was not at Westside yet, but I saw Matt squat 1,000 pounds. It wasn't the first time I saw Dave Waddington squat it the first time, but I did see Matt. Yeah. And it was, I mean, things get fuzzy because we're going back to a city in Cleveland. It was called Romulus, I believe, where Waddington hit 1,000. It was one of the first meets I ever did. It was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
This is crazy, you know, and it's squatting what did I squat that day? Maybe 485 or something like that. And it was before the round system. And I might have followed myself. You know, I might have opened with 400 and then 450, then 485. And then, you know, one of Louis' women opened it like 500. And then it's like watching this. And I believe that if memory serves me right, Waddington had to follow himself.
Holy shit.
You know, so because I was thinking that because I followed myself and I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah, right.
Like, this really sucks. And I'm like, man, I wish I had a little more rest, you know, but then I'm like, holy crap, he's doing that and he's following himself. Then I need to get in better shape or whatever it was. So I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't even imagine what that must feel like, because we had a conversation a while ago about at what point do weights start to feel different?
Well, those are regular bars too. This is before squat bars and shit. You know, so he had to wedge himself into a regular power bar and he had to walk it out. He's got regular racks. The racks weren't like the racks that we sell or the racks that you see today. The base of these racks were they were like fucking tires. You know, so you had to basically step around a tire, you know, to be able to, look at some of the old pictures, you know, of some of this crap, and you'll be able to see, you know, how crazy it was.
It's sketchy that shit got.
It did, because when I can remember when I'd walk stuff out, it wasn't, you know, for me, it wasn't so much the tires that I remember that much. It was this 1/4-inch steel base that you had to kind of like slide your foot over just to a little bit.
Oh,
so you had to step up. So it was like back, back, and then a little bit over, and then you could be set up a little bit. It was some crazy ass shit, but we didn't know any different. So it's all you had.
Right. Now, to kind of parlay off of that just a little bit, and that was our last super chat. I remember it said that there are certain weights that when you hit those weights, it was like, oh, this shit's heavy. You had mentioned that it was like 700 pounds the first time you did that, and then it was like 800 or 900.
900 was a big one. 900 was a big one.
And they just felt like just something different.
700. I think a lot of that is in what it takes for the bar to start doing what the bar does.
Yeah.
So with a regular bar, usually about 405, 495, it starts, kind of like whipping just a little bit, which would be a normal lip or whip without, not a power bar, just a regular bar. And that takes a little getting used to when you get to that, because as you're squatting up with 135, 225, whatever that's going to be, the only thing you really need to worry about is the weight sliding out a little bit because you're not using collars, that kind of crap, or rolling down your back because the knurling sucks,
right?
Crap like that. Then you get a power bar, then it doesn't really start any movement if it's a power bar until that 495, right around that ish. And that still kind of depends upon, if you have a smooth walkout, it's not going to be that bad. If you have a big ass step walkout, it's going to be a lot bigger. Then as the bars got better and like squat bars, then that weight gets a little bit heavier, plays a little different. For me and for most of the people I know, it's around that 700 point, where it's a good thing too, because it's also kind of that point where you start to realize I'm wasting some energy here that I shouldn't be wasting. If I don't waste this energy, then it could actually be more weight I can squat. The lighter weights, that's harder to really kind of determine, because you're not, yes, you're physically lifting a 1 RM, but if your body's not stable, your body's not tight, and the bar's going in ways that isn't just straight up and down, there's a lot of transfer of energy that's kind of just like all over the place. When that starts all going into the same place, you're stronger, but the way the bar reacts is going to be a lot different because it's going to be tighter. So now you're in that position and all that stays tight. That's when those heavier weights is like, oh shit, now this is compression. And the other big one, and I remember Dimmel telling me about this before I even got to it, it's hitting the eights, and it was like 820, then it was like 840, 860, and then maybe it was 875. Then he's like, man, you just wait, man. You're about 25. And he could have fucked with me though, too. And that's why I got that way. Right.
Right.
But it was, man, because I remember, and he was like, I told you. And and it was a second or whatever. You just get the fuck back underneath there. And you just understand. And this has been a quote or a meme or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Because what he told me is, just because it feels heavy doesn't mean it's heavy. Yeah. It just feels heavy because you got to hold all that weight. When you hold all that weight, it's always heavier. When you start absorbing the weight, you actually produce force against it, things change. And I didn't realize at that time how much that relates to life. Yeah. Holding the weight, man, that's always more stressful until you start absorbing it, and then you start, applying. So it was that. So those numbers, and I'm sure they're different based upon, I'd be silly to say that's the number, but because I'm a bigger person, so yeah, that's probably the number for the 275, 308 super heavy, but it definitely has to correlate down based upon body weight.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I ever touched anything near that was with yokes, and so yoke walks. So that was, there was a contest where we had to do, I think it was like 650, then like a 750, and the next one was like 9 something. And I got to that last one at 9, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, granted, I was tired from the first 2, but even getting under it, I was like, how does this move?
Yeah, and it just seems like there's X weight, everything's stable, that it has to ground you. Like the lighter weights don't necessarily, even with the yoke, the lighter weights don't necessarily feel like they're grounding you.
No.
So say your spine needs to compress a little bit. The muscles need to constrict, or not constrict, compress a little bit, where that time of holding it, for the lifters, you'll hear hold. And probably I would have to think, even with a yoke, you got to pick it, let it absorb into you before you can start moving.
Yeah.
You can't just
Yeah,
go.
if you do, you're fucked. I mean, you take that first step and it just pins you.
Yeah, so that's the grounding part that I don't know the mechanisms there, but there's definitely something going on.
Well, we even saw it this weekend. Is like the thing we kept saying the most was like, let it settle, and people don't trust it. They don't trust the process initially.
Well, yeah, because you got to hold it longer. It's like, why am I holding this longer? I want to get it off me as soon as I can.
Yeah. We actually ended up getting 2 super chats, 2 quick ones here. Michael Holder. Dave, have you ever torn the long head of your biceps tendon?
No.
It happened to me on a lockout of a close grip dumbbell bench 6 weeks ago. Yeah, I never tore it.
Close grip dumbbell bench, the long head of the bicep.
That's
Are
what it
you
says.
sure?
Yeah, that's what it says.
I mean, that's high, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot. My first question is, are you sure?
Yeah, it's like at the lockout, tearing your bicep.
There's a lot of shit going on up there. So
yeah, well, for sure.
Look at all the tendons and where they all attach up around that shoulder area, and you're going to be surprised at how they're all like intertwined.
Well, they were all like a lot of them all just attached to the same point.
Yeah,
it's like stacked on top of each other. So yeah, no, I guess I've never torn a bicep either, thankfully. So sorry about that, Michael. Jacob Burt says, having issues with starting to pass out during deadlifts, belt or no belt. Doesn't happen with any other lift. Do you have any suggestions? Thanks, Dave.
You can take that as more.
I would start with, okay, how are you holding your air? How are you bracing for a deadlift? Are you even getting enough air? I don't know. I've never worked with somebody that had like the fainting goat thing where they just get into a position and they pass out. Because I remember telling you this weekend at a meet, I was talking about some raw lifters were passing out. And it's like, how does that?
Well, I think that if the assumption that I'm making here is that you're definitely keeping your torso tight in the belt, right? So the pressure's got to be building somewhere. So it's definitely being kept there. Definitely keeping your air. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, right.
So, and one thing Louis taught me long time ago when my lockout, I had a time period where my lockout was, I don't want to say it was necessarily bad. I had to grind through it for a long time. And I would see the pixie dust, when you look at it, it's like stars all over the place,
My buddy used to call it Tweety birds.
Yeah. And that concerned me because if I'm starting to see that 3/4 of the way up, then I don't care about passing out, but am I going to drop it and not get the lift?
Well, yeah, you're not pushing as hard.
If I push that hard.
Yeah.
So what he suggested I learned to do was back up a little bit, is you just let out, just let the air out very slowly, not a lot of air, but because everything stays tight, but just like that. And I don't even know what that's called, like a bird call. It took all that away. It took it all away. So as soon as I started to hit that point where that pressure is really building, and it was just then it right away wasn't a problem. So that might be one of those weird ass things that somebody's going to definitely have to cue for a while, because when you're in that mind space, it's going to be hard. And then, but that made a night and day difference. Even on the squat, the same thing. If I really was straining against that and I felt like I was in the position I was supposed to be in, I wasn't going to compromise it. Now you breathe out too much, you compromise your position.
Right.
The same thing.
Yeah. You'll be breathing out during like a normal sticking point, and then you're stapled.
Yes. But it's for the squat. I was just hoping I could just solve out of the bottom and just blow all the way to the fucking top and not have to worry about it.
That's good. So yeah, that was all the super chats that we had here that came in. We're running at about the 2-hour mark, and that everything looks good.
How many people are on there right now?
We got 122.
All right, for the 122 that are there, this can probably be trimmed out to when it goes to the podcast. What we got going on for Black Friday, so it will be in advance to that. We're probably going to launch that tomorrow night. I don't know when, so you guys can get an early heads up for that.
Yep.
Anything that you've seen for the Better Than Black Friday they will be on sale, but obviously it will not be for those Better Than Black Friday amounts. I don't think, with the exception of 1 or 2 product lines, that we have agreements with those suppliers that we cannot put those items on sale. Everything that we have is going to be on sale. So that will start tomorrow night. The strength equipment sale, which is still going on right now. Well, no, wait, what's today? The strength equipment sale will end. Holy fuck, I didn't think about that. It's going to end tonight, but I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I may have to extend the strength equipment sale. I need to look into that a little bit more.
Well, yeah.
So you guys would have an advance notice on that. But when that's gone, that's gone. And I'm sure out of the 120 people, not that many are going to be interested in hearing this. But with that, if anybody is interested in the strength equipment that we do have on the site, that we do have on sale, even if you think it's, you're not too sure, you're kind of on the fence, I would do it, man, because we've already had to take the prices up on that stuff twice this year. And I've already had advance notice from 3 of our manufacturers, suppliers of strength equipment, that they have a very strong feeling that by the end of Q1, they're going to have to take things up another 10%, which sucks. I mean, it sucks for everybody, but that's the state that we're kind of living in. It's not going to go down, we'll put it that way. So keep that in mind as well. And other than that, I appreciate you guys. Thank you all. And out.
There we go. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Leave your comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe on all the podcast channels. Share this with everybody you know. And if you're in the live chat right now, make sure you press the like button, press the thumbs up button, do all the things, share it with your friends. And on behalf of me and Dave, we will see you guys in the next one.